Chalampago resident Paul Heflin believes that just like a personal checking account, whatever funds you have in it, that's all you're allowed to spend. But unlike the government, he believes they have gone over the line in spending, resulting in its current financial crunch. Having experienced the downsizing himself working in the ship repair industry, he understands what the governor is trying to do.
It took this long. It's about time, actually. That's the way I see it.
And what about the people who might be losing their jobs, though?
I see the part where he says they're going to try to find them in the private sector. Well, that's pretty good, too.
Unlike Heflin, Speaker Judy Wampet doesn't necessarily see downsizing as a good thing, calling on Governor Eddie Cabo in her weekly address to release more specific details about his plans for reorganization and layoffs.
I'm against a layoff when, one, you don't have a plan. You don't know why, other than the fact that you say you need to cut back. You got to really look at each individual department to determine either how large it is and why it's large and what are the services that they're providing. Because don't forget is that when they say our government is growing, it's not growing to the extent that we just want to, continue to add people. It's because there's a demand for more services.
Speaker Wampet did say that although she supports streamlining the government through the consolidation of agencies and divisions, she doesn't support the termination of classified government personnel without first exhausting all other options. She suggests stepping up efforts to apply for federal grants. Governor's Chief of Staff Frank Arreola had no comment on Wampet's address, but reiterated that Governor Cabo has been utilizing federal funding and has factored it into the government's day-to-day cash operations. Arreola added, however, Guam can't continue to bank on Uncle Sam.
And the U.S. federal government, as you know, has its own challenges. And so as a matter of fact, we are talking to our cabinet members to look at their federal programs and their grants and be aware that the federal government is in a cost-cutting mode as well. And so that we need to look at those particular programs to ensure that our programs locally aren't affected negatively.
In terms of releasing more information to lawmakers, the governor's office today said they'll need 24 hours before any public information will be available. Arreola is currently looking over reports submitted from different agency heads ranging from cost reduction plans to their reorganization programs. He expects to have recommendations for the governor tomorrow morning.
There were some really aggressive and progressive proposals put forth by some of our cabinet members. And so they addressed a lot of the cash flow issues as well as some personnel and department consolidations. So we're going to be looking over those sorts of things.
In the meantime, the first general layoff notice will go out Friday advising all GovGuam employees that layoffs are potentially on the horizon. The individuals who occupy certain positions that have been identified as being no longer required will be notified within 30 days from the general notice. Arreola stresses that layoffs are not being looked on as personal, but as position situation. For residents like Maria Hernandez from Manilao, if layoffs need to happen, then so be it, because it's not just Guam that's suffering financially, but other communities across the country, including Puerto Rico, where she's originally from.
Everywhere the government is laying out a lot of people. I don't know how the United States is going to work with that, because Guam is part of the United States, but this needs for drastic measurements.